Hey everybody, welcome back to Ralph's Crafts. So today we're going to talk about jigs, what they are, why you might use them, why I find them absolutely necessary, and more importantly, how to make them. So today we'll just need one piece of wood or acrylic or whatever you want to cut this on, and whatever product you're making the jig for. So today we'll make a jig for these little Xtool keychains. Now, the purpose behind a jig is a couple things. Number one, if you have items like this, it'll keep them in the same position, so that way if you're using air assist, they won't blow around. And the other thing is it really helpful for batch processing. So if I make these a lot, or I need to make a lot of these, a jig is going to really help me out with that, because everything's going to be in a set position. With jigs, you don't have to set them up each time you do a new job, as long as you set the jig up properly to begin with. So that's what we're going to work on today. So first things first, I'm going to go ahead and get my wood that I'll be cutting the jig out of into the machine. So we talk about making sure that the jig is set up properly, so that way you get the same results each time. For me, I like to make sure my crumb tray is all the way in, my honeycomb is all the way over to the left and all the way down. If you don't use a honeycomb, there's places like the Clack Shack, where he has created this jig system, which is also very amazing. If you don't have a honeycomb, this kind of screws over into the corner, and then these are the jigs that are interchangeable, so that way it's always in the same spot every time. So we're basically doing the same thing, but we're going to do it with the honeycomb. So I've got my crumb tray all the way back, my honeycomb all the way to the right and forward. Now I'm going to take my wood and I'm just going to put it in this bottom right hand corner of the honeycomb, and just make sure we're all squared up here, and we are. So just like with every other project, let's hop over to the computer real quick. So this is kind of what I call my master jig file, so that way I can keep them all in the same one instead of having 100 separate XCS files out there on the jig. So the way that I do this is, let me close it out so it's not seen. In the title or untitled portion, whatever it is, of your project, you'll just click here and this canvas screen will pop up. So I'm just going to add one. I'm going to name this Rec Keychains. And now I want to get my stuff set up. So currently I'm going to use some 3mm basswood. So just like with every project, this part is all the same. We're going to get our distance to the material. And next we're going to mark our area. So I'll go to the upper leftmost, lower rightmost, all right. Let's go back to the computer. We'll end our marking, and done. Okay, so we know this is the area that we have to work with. Next thing we want to do is measure our product, because we have to put that in there. So let's see, looking at these keychains we've got, we'll call it 50.1 millimeters high. So I'm just going to toss a shape in here. And our width is 29.3. Make sure nothing changes. Okay, so we have our first shape in there, but obviously I'm not going to make a jig for one item. So I'm just going to put this in a good starting spot there. And now I'm going to come over to the left-hand side with these shapes that says applications. And with the item that I measured highlighted, I'm going to press grid array. And now this is going to allow me to add more in there. So let's go 6. Actually, sorry, one moment. I want to show you, because sometimes you might have something flat, like say dog tags, or you might want to put a backing on your jig. So I'm just going to add an additional shape in here. So we'll take one of these half moons, shrink it down some, and I just want to put this along the side. Zoom in some because I want to make sure it's right up against the line there. Here we go. I think we can probably get a little bit smaller with that. And in the center. Okay, so let's hide this again so we can see everything. Okay, so now I want to select both of those items. And we'll go over here, grid array. And we'll go 3, 4, 5. Let's see how much spacing we can get if we do 6. Yeah, that's not bad. And same thing. Let's do 4 just so we have an even, if we were going to do 2 dozen of these at a time. Okay, so this is what our jig is going to look like. So let's go ahead and process that. Oop, 2 minutes. We must have, yep, it's on score. So we want to make sure that's cut and process. Okay, so we have our file done. So now, as you see with this jig, I can constantly put these in the same spot. So one thing I see with this jig is we probably should have cut a little piece here too for where the key ring attaches in. So if you were going to make a bunch of these, I would probably measure out that part also. But for me, I'm not batch processing them, and I also have some of these dog tags, and the dog tags will fit in there nicely too. So I'll overcome that just by unscrewing. There's a little screw that holds a keyring holder in. So for the purpose of this, I'm just going to pull that out. Obviously, if you're batch doing these and you're making a bunch of them a bunch of times, you're probably not going to want to take this out of each one of these. But the show must go on. Okay, so also what I do, just so I never forget which way this goes in, I just put a little arrow so I know that anytime I put it in, the jig will go that way. Okay, so let's clean this mess up real quick and then we'll show you how to put this in practice. Okay, so now that we have the initial part of the jig set up, we're going to go back on the computer. I'm just going to Command A to select all and turn off the output because we don't want this to ever cut again, right? This is just for us to see where we have stuff. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pull in a couple of pictures here. My son is a big F1 fan, so I will go ahead and make a keychain for him. So I'm just going to pull both those files in. All right, so I'm going to take our little F1 car here. I'm going to make it small enough to fit on one of these squares. Get that all good and centered up. All right. So I just want to change my material here. See what the product code was on these. HA004. Let's try searching that way. Okay, so we'll use that. Put it on engrave. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to completely close out Xtool, or excuse me, XCS. I'm going to randomly place our laser module and turn off our machine. I'm only doing this to show that by putting this together, when you put everything in and go to make your creations, it will work. Okay, so let's go ahead, turn our laser back on. And we will open up XCS. Okay, so remember we said that we set up our jig. So my tray is all the way in, honeycomb is all the way forward, all the way to the right. I'll align that back up in the corner where my little red arrow is. I'm just going to toss a couple of these in place to hold everything still. Okay, so let's open up that jig file. Plop our keychain down in this bottom right hand corner because that's where I put the picture. And then just for poops and giggles, let's go ahead and put some random ones in here to test. So we'll say 2, 4, and 1. Okay, so we did 2, 4, and 1. Okay, so let's go ahead and process this. And see how it goes. Okay, so as you see, everything, no matter where it was at, worked out okay. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and do the back side here. And now take our F1, shrink that down. And just for fun, let's go ahead and this time we'll engrave it here. Just going to zoom in, make sure everything is looking good. So one thing I didn't do when we went to go actually burn the image is I never refocused the laser. Thankfully, that wasn't a problem, but make sure you remember to refocus the laser when you're doing a new item, so you don't waste materials. Especially if I did a whole batch and they came out messed up, that would have been a lot of lost product. Okay, let's get this side done. And there you go. Okay, so hopefully you can find a use for jigs in your workflow. If you have any questions around the jigs. Now, again, if you don't feel like measuring and getting everything out, there's a bunch of jig files on Etsy. Um, I purchased some for like watch bands because that's a lot of measurements I didn't want to take. So if somebody else already did the legwork, I'll pay them for it. But if it's smaller or easier items like this, you can absolutely easily make your own jigs for batch processing. All right, if you have any questions or any additional comments you'd like to put, or if you have a different way of making jigs or something that I may have missed, please feel free to put that down in the comment section below. So that way the whole community can learn from it together. I'm still learning a lot myself as we go through this. As you can see, not refocusing lasers and that kind of stuff. So it happens, we're all human, but I think together we can help propel each other in this area of crafts. Other than that, we'll see you next time. Bye.